Hi, this is DrumWise Meets, and today I'm here with Joe Crabtree, who is the drummer for Wishbone and the creator of the PolyNome app. Hi, Joe.
Hey, how you doing?
So, Joe, my first question today is, what age did you start drumming? What was your first drum kit? And when you started drumming, what was your main inspiration musically?
Okay, I was 11 when I started drumming. My first drum kit was a Kestrel drum kit, which I don't even know if it's a thing anymore. And I had laser cymbals that sounded worse than hitting like dustbin lids. Um, and as far as influences, I can remember being somewhat younger, and my brother had some plastic drumsticks with wires that came out of the butt of them into a little box and would play space age drum sounds when you hit things. It was a toy thing. And I would set up the dustbin. I had a little plastic waste paper bin with a dustbin lid on the top and things like that. I would set those up on my bed and hit those with the sticks. I turned the sounds off because they were terrible, but I liked hitting things with sticks. And I would say that the kind of music that got me into drumming, initially some Peter Gabriel records with Jerry Marotta and Phil Collins. Of course, I didn't know who the drummers were on these things, but things with tribal tom beats are what really drew me to the drums. And I still love that kind of thing. And when I went for my first drum lesson, I asked for a drum kit for Christmas, specified that I didn't want electric drums because I'd seen in the Argos catalog a thing with 8 pads on, and that didn't look like fun, but hitting actual drums looked like fun. And I really didn't think that I would get one, but I put it on my Christmas wish list. And 2 weeks before Christmas, I went into the spare room randomly, and there was something covered up with a big sheet, and I like peered underneath, and there was a drum kit, and I was so excited. And I had to feign that on Christmas Day, feign the excitement. And I think I was ill as well on the day, so I don't know how it came across, but I was genuinely, that's maybe the most excited I've been in my life, like seeing an actual drum kit. And then I got it and I was like, I don't know what to do with this. And inspiration wise, I went to my first drum lesson, and the drum teacher answered the door and he said, what bands do you like? And my answer was New Kids on the Block. But it's the same thing. They had 2 songs that were basically really tom heavy grooves, and that stuck out to me. Tom toms is like where I'm coming from, I guess. Is the long answer to your short question.
Oh, that's great. That's a great answer. So you heard it here first, guys. Joe Crabtree's main influence when he first started playing New Kids on the Block.
New Kids on, and the funny thing is, I said to him, his face like sagged, and he said, "What about the Beatles? You like the Beatles?" Because he didn't have a CD player; it was just vinyl, and he had me playing to the Beatles, and I did love the Beatles, fortunately. But the whole irony was that I got this drum kit and I wanted it to sound like the the New Kids on the Block song, and he said, "Oh, that's an electric kit," which was exactly what I didn't ask for. And so there was years of trying to make my toms sound like really meaty and cool, which is just not possible with a crappy kit and no knowledge of how to tune.
And actually, talking about kits, so what's your current equipment setup? So when you're touring with Wishbone Ash, what's your gear?
I play Sonar drums and Zildjian cymbals, and I've used them for a long time. I went through a few different kits early on. I met a rep from Sonar when I was at some drum show in Birmingham or something, and he was a cool guy, and I just joined Wishbone Ash. And I was looking around like you do, really excited about trying to get some kind of endorsement. And I approached various companies, and they had zero interest. And the guy from Sonar was really enthusiastic. And I liked that they made their drums in Germany. Well, some of the drums in Germany, and that they really seemed. You get companies like Yamaha, and I love Yamaha drums, and I love lots of other manufacturers' drums. But you get a company like Yamaha that make motorbikes and guitars and everything, and it feels less like a drum company than Sonar does. I warmed to that, and the thing that really sold me was that they didn't have the lugs with the, you'd need a screwdriver for anymore. At least they'd moved to some of the kits having regular lugs, tuning, whatever you call them, tension rods. Because that put me off Sonar for many years. That you had to have a silly drum key that you would lose, and then you couldn't tune your drums. So yeah, Sonar and Zildjian, equipment-wise, what I use.
Cool. So I think that we draw our influences from many places when we're learning, and our influences when we're young aren't necessarily our same influences now. So for example, I imagine you've not been listening to too much New Kids on the Block this week. But if you had to pick one, who's your all-time favorite drummer?
That's such a tough question, because obviously it really depends on so many things. You will probably know I'm a big Vinny Colaiuta fan. Like, he's been a huge inspiration since I first saw him on a Zildjian Day in New York video, and that just floored me. Just how he looked when he was playing and the stuff that he was coming out with, and he really can do everything. He's such a versatile guy, and he can play the most complicated stuff, and he's got a great groove, and he can get so many different sounds out of the kit. So and I've covered a lot of his fills and things. To me, it feels like he has an endless repertoire of ideas. There's a lot of drummers that play the same things. It's them because they have so many fills that they go for, so many things, and he seems to be able to just generate like bottomless degrees of amazing fills and groove ideas. And so yeah, he's definitely pretty much at the top, I would say. But then there's a lot of drummers that I'm so influenced by because of the music they played. Phil Collins is a big one. He kind of invented a drum sound and style that influenced a lot of the music that I grew up with. He's responsible for the 80s drum sound, the snare drum thing. And I grew up thinking that was what he did. And then I discovered the early Genesis stuff from Brand X, and was just blown away by his musicality and the ideas that he would come up with in some of those songs. It's just incredible. So he's a huge influence as well. And then guys like John Bonham for just the sound. And I don't know, it's so hard to do what he did and do it that well. So it's like a handful of people. And Dave Weckl was probably my first drummer influence. I played to all these Beatles records, and drumming was just about basic beats for me until I saw a Dave Weckl instructional video, and that blew my mind. I'd never even imagined that the things he was doing were possible, and that was the start of my journey into all that really technical world. And then Vinny came kind of later, but Weckl and Vinny were two of my big heroes growing up.
Right, cool. Yeah, nice list of people there.
You said pick one.
Well, no, you did to begin with, so that's cool. I couldn't pick one, so I'm asking the questions, but I couldn't do it. It's meant to be hard. I don't want to make your life. Yeah. So, what's been the highlight of your career so far?
That's also a tough question because it changes all the time. Usually a highlight for me is the next thing, I think, well, I can remember back. I think it's really helpful to remember what it's like when something happens, because I just finished a US tour with Wishbone, and US tours now it's like I've been to all of the venues already multiple times. We sometimes do it tour once or twice a year over here for the last 13 years. I think I've been in the band. So I've done it a lot, and it's like a day job, But I remember having joined the band, hearing that we were going to do a US tour maybe, and I didn't know that they'd really done many before. And to me, it was really exciting, the idea of going to America and playing gigs in America. At some point in my past, I think I read somewhere, write down some goals, like things you would like to happen. And I remember writing on there, I wanted to go to New York, and I wanted to travel and get paid for it, and I wanted to go places as the result of being in a band, and all of those things happened. And so they were really exciting when they happened, and now I've done them many times, and it's like the day job. So it's good sometimes to remember like how excited I was to do those things in the first place, and not get too sort of complacent. And I sometimes think it must be the same if you're Stuart Copeland, and playing Madison Square Gardens is just, oh, you've done it so many times, and so those kind of things, getting to travel to great places. We did some shows in South Africa and managed to tie in doing a safari with that, and that was very cool. And we went to Japan. So it's exciting visiting, lands far away and not having to pay for the flights and accommodation. I like that aspect of it. Playing some big shows. We just did, the first time we went to South Africa was a 3-band tour with Deep Purple and Uriah Heep, and we played, sort of Coca-Cola arenas and stuff like that, 20,000, 30,000 people, and that was fun. I don't do a lot of that kind of gigging, but it was fun to do. But aside from those things, what's been really exciting for me is creating this app PolyNome, and then getting to meet a lot of my heroes and have them use it is really exciting. Like the one time that I spoke to Vinny Colaiuta was because he was using PolyNome, and I was Skyping with him and sort of explaining how to use it all. So that's kind of fun, that there's this different world that I'm occupying now, and I'm getting to sort of communicate with these people, and
That's great. And actually, can you talk to us more about PolyNome? So how did it come about? How, where did the idea come from, and how did you develop it into what it is today? And actually, I should probably just mention here, if people watching this don't know what PolyNome is, which, to be honest, all of our DrumWise students should know what it is, because we push them towards PolyNome. But it's an incredible app. But obviously, I'll let Joe explain more about it.
Well, the long story is, if you want the long story, you can. I'll give you the short story afterwards if you got to edit. I'll try and make it concise. I had some time off and decided what I wanted to do with my spare time was go and take lessons with drummers that I respected. So I had a 5-day trip to New York, and I booked in as many lessons as I could with whatever guys were giving lessons over there. So I took a lesson with Billy Ward and Robbie Amin and John Riley and Don Famularo, Mike Clark. Just tried to sort of fit as many lessons as I could in. And it was really inspiring, especially seeing how excited and enthusiastic these guys were about what they did and how different they were. Because I've always wanted to try and be a sort of jack of all trades and be able to cover every style. But then I'd see, John Riley's doing his thing, and Robbie Amin's doing his thing, and Billy Ward's doing his thing. And they were just focused on that. Anyway, in 2 of those lessons, the one with Robbie Amin and the one with Billy Ward, part of the lesson was that they would have me play a groove. Like Robbie Amin's the easier one to explain. We had 2 kits set up, and he would play this left foot clave groove, and I would join in and play with him. And then he would play a bar of fill while I kept the groove going. And then on the following bar, I had to try and mimic what he'd played. And it was fun. It was really fun. And I thought this would be a fun thing to do at home, but you really need another person in order to do that. So, I'd had plenty of experience taking books like The New Breed and taking the reading pages of that and interpreting those pages in different ways. But that's testing your ability to read a rhythm and interpret it, not your ability to hear something and interpret it. And if you made a CD with random rhythms on it, then there are specific tempos and specific styles. And once you've heard them once, they're no longer fresh. So I thought it would be really fun to have like a piece of software that would kind of mimic that scenario, you know, where you could put in some parameters and it would generate things for you to practice ear training. So I had no idea how to do this. And on my return from New York, I stayed with a friend and told him about this. And he said that there's this piece of software called Max MSP, which is a kind of visual way of creating code. It's really difficult to explain, but you can basically quite easily plug together little MIDI synthesizers and things like that. And he showed me the basics of how it worked, and I started to get an idea of how I might be able to make something that did what I wanted. And over the coming months, I managed to build this piece of software called Rhythm Machine, which is on my website. But ideally, that ran on PC or Mac inside of this Max MSP bit of software, and it looked sort of a bit cheap, and you know, it's not like amazingly designed, but it was sort of functional. But really, I wanted to do this on an iPhone because I had an iPhone, and I thought that would be a great place to have it. But I had no idea how to write software for an iPhone. I just didn't know where to start. And so what happened after that, I wrote another piece of software that was basically 4 step sequences that you could run at different rates and put patterns into, and I called that Octopus Sequencer. And then somebody messaged me and said, can I program a table of time into either of your 2 bits of software? You know, so where you go from like a whole note to 2 half notes to 3 half note triplets, like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So basically it's a metronome, but the rate's changing. The tempo stays the same, but the rate is changing. And you couldn't do that in either of my 2 bits of software, but it felt like that would be an easy thing to create. So I created another piece of software called Pyramid that did that. You just typed in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it would play those rates sequentially. So in the background, I have this online lessons website, and I had various students sign up to that. And one student signed up, and in my email, when I was kind of emailing him and saying thanks for signing up, his email address or his signature kind of said that he lived in New York and he worked for Pixar, which I thought was really cool. And I emailed him and said, thanks for signing up. That's really cool that you work for Pixar and live in New York. I like New York. We chatted a bit, and I was going to be over there for a tour. And he said, oh, Weckl is playing with the Brecker Brothers reunion. And it turned out this guy was also Dave Weckl's drum tech. So he said, if you come out, you know, I'll get you into the gig and we can meet up. So I did that. And in the course of that gig, I found out that he had been learning to write code for iPhones so that he could maybe make an app for Dave, but that hadn't really come to fruition yet. And I said to him, how easy do you think it would be to translate this Pyramid software that I wrote into an iPhone app? And he said, I think that's doable. So the very first version he wrote. So sorry, that's not very concise, but that's how the first version came along. But it was an app that just played different rates that you typed in. And we put it up on the App Store in 2011. And then cut to a couple of years later, and I started having all these ideas for things that I wanted to put into the app. One in particular was a practice log, so that if I was working on something, I wanted it to time how long I'd been playing, what the date was, what the tempo was, what the name of the preset was, and then see charts and things, so I could come back to an exercise, you know, 2 weeks from now and see what tempo I'd got to and how long I'd worked on it, that kind of thing. And I told him about this idea, and he said, I think that's a great idea, but I just got married, I changed jobs, I moved across the country, and I don't have any time to work on this. It was like a side project thing. But he'd shared the code base with me, and I had 3 months off touring. So instead of spending 4 hours a day practicing, which is what I just started doing for the first time in my life, I spent probably 12 hours a day watching iTunes University lectures and reading books on coding and trying to figure out how I could, you know, make this thing happen in the app. And it started out with me looking at his code and copying and pasting bits that I had no idea what they did, and pasting them somewhere else and changing the name. And then if I do that, this page comes up, and okay, that's cool. I've made something happen, but I did not understand what I was doing in the slightest. And I would say it took 6 months of that kind of thing before I got a vague idea of what I was doing and understanding. And since then, I've spent the majority of my time that's not been on tour just working on that. And now PolyNome is this like really deep app that does pretty much anything you can think of.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was really long answer.
No, it's great. Well, it's a really interesting thing to talk about, and you know, it really is a great app. Going back to the playing side of things now, when you first get a gig with a new artist, how do you learn the material? So do you just listen to it? Do you transcribe it? Are you just given a folder with all of the drum music and they go, here you go, Joe, here you go, Joe, here's the entire show written out for you? How's it worked for you?
Well, I've only played with a few bands. There was a point where I was doing a bunch of auditions when just after I moved to London in 2004, and they'd send me, 3-song demos, and I'd kind of learn those. And depending on usually it depends on how easy it is, because some songs you listen to and you go, oh, I can play that. I don't need to do anything with it. And other songs, for example, the first band I really needed to do that with, I played with David Cross, who was the violin player with King Crimson, and we played a bunch of King Crimson things, and I had to figure out what was going on and write stuff down. There was no way to blag your way through that. And then the second band that I played with was a band called Pendragon. I did a European tour with them. And the story with that was I'd called them because somebody I knew said, oh, I heard that this band's looking for a drummer. You should call them up. And in my head, normally I would have put that stuff off and maybe called him at some point, or maybe not. But in my head, there was that saying, why put off till tomorrow what you can do today? And I thought, just call him. And I called him up, and he said, how do you know we need a drummer? Our drummer doesn't know that we need a drummer. So it was just some kind of rumor, but they were basically, he wasn't going to be doing the next tour with them. And so he said, we've actually got someone in mind. So thanks for calling, but it's fine. You can send you stuff if you want. And I sent him an email with a link to my website. And then 3 days later, I got a call saying, can you do this month-long European tour starting in 2 weeks from now? And I was going to Kenya for 10 days, which was another really last-minute thing. And I said, sure, send me the CDs. I'll learn the stuff when I'm over there. And then, I'll come to the rehearsal a couple of days before it starts, and it'll be fine. And then I got sick in Kenya. I didn't work on any of the stuff while I was there because it was just too nice and it was a holiday. And I thought I'll do it on the plane journey on the way back. And then I got sick and ended up being, unable to do anything on the plane journey on the way back. And I had 2 days to learn this whole set. I called them up and said, can we scrap the first day of rehearsals because I need to do prep? And the process I did with that, and it kind of changes from band to band, but I find the first time I listen through to a song, if it's a long and complicated song, the first thing I want to know is, if there's a bit that happens, does it happen again somewhere else? And it's not always obvious when I'm listening to a song, whether if it's a 9-minute song, whether this thing that happens 3 minutes in has already happened. I kind of think, well, it sounds a bit familiar. Is that another chorus or verse? What would I call this? So I think for that band, I put all of the stuff into Cubase, just the audio file, and then I put markers in where there was an obvious change of section. So this is changing from an A section to a B section. I don't yet know what I will call these, whether A is the verse and B is the chorus, or this is the middle 8, or this is a C, a bridge. But I'd put markers in so that I could easily jump back and compare things. And I think I even color coded, like, okay, this is a red section, and later on, that's another red section. So I can just see the overall structure. And doing it in Cubase was helpful because I could easily see how many bars things were. This was an 8-bar A section, and here there's also an A section, but it happens to be 9 bars because there's some extra thing at the end. Those are useful things to know. Mm-hmm. So I kind of get a general overall bird's eye view of what the song looks like, and then I go and start to fill in the details. And with that overall view, if I were to write in a draft of the groove that happens in this section and that section, and there's no fills, I could blag my way through that song with that amount of information. And then I'll listen through, and if there are fills that I think, well, that sounds like a really memorable fill that people would know, or it's one that I particularly like, then I will write it out note for note and learn it and memorize it. And if there's a fill I don't particularly like, I think, well, I'll just improvise that until I come up with something that I like. And that band was difficult because there were parts where the songs there'd be two sections to a song, and they were completely different. And the second section might be at a completely unrelated tempo. You know, the first song would kind of like almost fade out, the first part of it, and then it would just come in at a random tempo, not any kind of metric modulation, just somewhat faster. And the first few gigs I did with them, I didn't really know the songs that well. And I'd get to that point and I'd think, oh man, I have to start this, but I can't remember how it goes. I know that it's this groove, but I don't remember the tempo. And it was really, you know, hoping for the best. And I remember some occasions where the keyboard player would, like, I'd have to start the song on the drums, and I knew what the groove was because I had it written, but I didn't have PolyNome, which would have been great. And I just had to start a groove and hope. Like, I knew that I would recognize the song once everyone else came in. I'd be like, oh, it's that one. But I wasn't familiar enough that the name conjured up how it went. So I was just randomly starting. Hence, one of the features in PolyNome is that you can put in the groove of a song that you got to play. So now when I'm counting songs off, I hear a bar of the groove, and that's what I use as my click, and it helps me get into the feel. I would have loved that back then.
Yeah. Great feature.
Yeah. There are songs where I've notated the whole song note for note, because the drumming has been, it's not just a groove, it's an interesting part, and there's lots of different bits that go with the bass player, and I like the parts, and I think I wouldn't, because I know from being in the studio, sometimes you really compose drum parts. And I suspect if you're in a Rush tribute band or a Tower of Power tribute band, you're not going to blag those parts. They were really well conceived and thought out. So it would be doing it an injustice to just make it up on the spot. But I tend to find, like, now my learning of new songs is just when Andy, the singer on Wishbone, says, okay, we're going to do this song, and it's an old one that I've not heard from an album. So to me, it's a new song. He hasn't played it for a long time. And it's interesting to me that it starts out as something I'm completely unfamiliar with, and it seems to take all these weird twists and turns and the strange numbers sections, and then I'll write it out and I'll listen through in the hotel room and kind of go, okay, I think I've got it, and I'll try and play, air drum along and see where I get caught out. But it's only when we do it in sound check and we get to a part and I think, oh, I don't really know what happens here, and I'll see if I can blag it along with the band. That's when I realize where the holes in my knowledge are, and I can patch them. I can go and listen to that bit and go, oh, does that fill? Yeah, that's it. But then after playing it a few times and then playing it night after night for 2 months, it just becomes that you know it so well that you're not even thinking about sections or counting bars or anything. You just know the intricacies of this song like the back of your hand. And it's a totally different thing to play music that way, where you just know exactly what everybody's going to play at every instant. And it gives you kind of a freedom that is difficult to appreciate until you've done it, because most people don't play the same song 100 times a year. They just play it once or twice because it's fun, or at weekends, in a jam band. So yeah,
that's some really good advice in there. I like the color coding thing as well. I mean, that's something that I've done before, chopping the color coding them. Very good tip when you're learning stuff. So just talking about teaching drums, you mentioned students that you've had in the past. What sort of person do you think it takes to be a good drum teacher? Because I really believe that just because you're a good drummer doesn't mean that you make a good teacher. I think they're two very different things. They can be the same thing, But I think a lot of people kind of go, oh, this guy was, in this band, and I really want to have a lesson with him. But it doesn't necessarily mean anything, in my opinion.
Hmm.
What do you feel about that?
I think qualities for a good drum teacher would be patience for one, the desire to want to teach, because like you say, um, there are some people who have zero interest in teaching. They just want to play and be creative. There's a lot of drummers that I've met who are incredible players and can play amazing stuff, but they don't really know what they're playing. They're not able to break it down and explain it to you. They're just like, oh, I just do it. I don't know what it is. So the ability to be able to deconstruct things and figure out how to explain them is important. And I love all of that stuff, and I feel like I'm a better teacher than I am a player. There's guys that I can figure out what people are doing, but I don't spend a lot of time being creative and coming up with my own stuff, or even working on my own my own playing. I like breaking things down and figuring them out and understanding them, and then I know how much time goes into being able to execute things really, really well, and that is somewhat less interesting to me these days than just understanding it. It's like a magic trick. I'll do a bit of close-up magic as well, and I want to know how it works. Want to know how it works. I don't necessarily have to put in the 12 hours to learn some dexterous move. Sometimes I do it because I enjoy it, but there's not enough time in my life for that anymore. And there's so many people who are just such incredible players, and I just think I've missed the boat to be in there. So I enjoy teaching, and I do think that the student teacher relationship is one that there isn't a teacher that's perfect for every student. It's very much like just getting on with people. I like to think in some ways that I'm a good people person. I get on with almost everyone, but the truth is I get on with the people that I get on with. And some people that I really don't particularly like, and I just don't choose to hang out with them. And if they were my students and they were paying to come and take lessons, but we didn't gel, that would be a bad match. And it doesn't mean that they're a bad student. It means that or I'm a bad teacher, just that we're not compatible.
Yeah.
And I interviewed some drummers a while back, and I would ask similar questions, and it was interesting to me how varied people's beginnings were. For me, I had a drum teacher who was really enthusiastic and just had me play drums to records. He didn't read music and didn't even believe in reading music, and he really kind of fanned this flame in me to just want to play and have fun. And I remember having so much fun the first time I could play through an entire song and put all the fills in. It was Please Please Me by the Beatles. And once I could do it and play through this 3-minute song, I would just put that on over and over and over again. And it was just this unfettered joy to play this song. And I didn't understand it. I didn't know probably what time signature it was in. I couldn't have written it out. I was just playing, and it was fun. And there's other drummers that I've spoken to who said their teacher didn't let them touch a drum kit for 3 years. They weren't even allowed a snare drum. It was practice pad, and learn a single stroke roll and a double stroke roll and do this. And that might turn out some really technically good drummers, and not just technically good. It might be a good path. But I think if you put me on that path, I probably would have not wanted to go to drum lessons, and I wouldn't be a drummer. So I think the most important quality in a teacher is to inspire and not put somebody off. Not kill a flame that might be there. I also played guitar, and I liked playing guitar. I went to guitar lessons every week, and I didn't practice in between because practice seemed like a work thing, and I didn't practice. And every week I'd go back, and he'd say, "Oh, how have you been getting on with this?" And I'd say, "Fine," because I basically just played in the lesson. And when I quit, because he wouldn't teach me something that I wanted to learn, he wanted to do something different to what I wanted to do, and I just thought, I've had enough of this. my guitar, instead of being in a case, it was a lot of effort to get it out of the case and plug it into the amp and do that. And I was just too lazy. But once I had no more guitar lessons, the guitar lived on the stand plugged into the amp. And so if I would walk into my bedroom, I could just pick it up just for 20 seconds to try something and put it down. And as a result of it just being easy to pick up and do, I started practicing and playing a lot and really got into it. And that's a lesson I think is important to learn, that motivation doesn't have to precede action. You know, the idea of thinking like, oh, I don't feel like doing something. Most people don't feel like doing things most of the time. If you do, you're really lucky. But most artists and people who, like professionals, have something that makes them start even if they don't want to, which is the discipline element of it. But it doesn't have to be hard. It just has to be, put a practice pad and some sticks somewhere and pick the sticks up and play for 30 seconds. And usually you find that grabs you enough, and you might spend 20 minutes there, or an hour, or 5 minutes, but anything is better than nothing.
Let's move away from drums for a minute. So what are your hobbies away from drums and music and PolyNome?
I don't really have any. I literally spend, well, I got married, and so now I don't know if you would say my hobby is my wife, but the relationship takes some nurture, and she would say that I don't like spend enough time doing that, so I need to work on that. But I actually really love doing the PolyNome thing. With drums, the reason that I loved drums was I would see somebody playing something and it would excite me, and I would think I want to do that, and I wouldn't understand it usually. So that's why I got into the idea of breaking things down. I like trying to figure out the secrets behind things and then learn them and be able to do them. That excited me, and being creative excited me, and bug fixing my playing, you know, kind of, why can't I play this faster, or why can't I play this more accurately, and just slowing things down and getting inside the workings of it, trying to understand it, was fun for me. And as a professional drummer, I felt that when I wasn't on tour or I didn't have a gig, I felt like I should be investing in my skills as a drummer and practicing, just getting better. And then I ended up in this band for 13 years with really regular work that wasn't really challenging me. Like I don't need to do any practice to do that gig. And if I'm working on something so that I can play faster or more complicated things, there's no outlet for that in that band. So I was just doing it for the heck of it, you know. And I'd focus more on making grooves sound good and things. But even that, like, I could practice between the tour and come back and play, and I might be much better at doing what I'm doing, but it was really not noticeable to anybody apart from me. So that the motivation for that dropped off a little bit. And I find with PolyNome and with coding, it scratched the same itches that drumming did. It was a creative thing where I would have an idea for a feature that I wanted and could get excited about. And then I had to figure out how I was going to do that, which is dissecting, you know, it's the equivalent of seeing Dave Weckl do something really fun and then figuring out how it works. But it's now an idea that I've had, so I have to figure out how that's going to work. And then I build it and put it together, like just putting in the practice hours. And then it doesn't quite work like I want, you know, some button just disappears off the screen when you click here. And so you have to go and fix the bugs, which can be frustrating. And sometimes you can spend hours and hours and hours trying to, you know, banging your head against the wall. Why is this not working? But the longer you spend in that state, the more rewarding it is when you finally figure it out. And so I really enjoy doing it. And I never really thought that I would. I never really thought it would be such an enjoying thing. But I love it. And so, and it has filled the hole that drums left. So I do very little drumming these days and a lot more coding. And I wish I had more time to play around with other things, but there's always a big long list of stuff to do with this. So I spend my time on that.
And I'm nodding a lot because I feel your pain with the whole, when you said, you know, and this button just disappears, because I kind of have built the DrumWise website from kind of a shell that was given to me, and I kind of had to finish it off. So I had to learn WordPress very quickly, and so frustrating. Well, you'll change one thing, and then you'll reload the website, and you're like, "Where's the website gone? Why have I got white screen of death?
Yeah.
What?" And then you have to learn about FTP and try and get in the back end to fix the problem, and it's just like, oh, so I can, I mean, I know it's a different thing, but I can totally relate to that, and I feel your pain.
Yeah, in some ways, that stuff is a distraction. You know, it would be great if you could just say, I want it to do this, and it could be done. And I guess in big companies, you have someone who does those things, and you're the creative director of how the whole thing should work. But when it's just like a one-man operation, same deal. You know, I spend a lot of time doing things in WordPress or doing, you know, getting involved in all aspects of those things and having to learn how to do them. And sometimes I think, well, should I just get someone else to do this, pay someone to do it who really knows what they're doing? And that probably would be a better use of my time. And I'm starting to try and do a little bit of that. But on the other hand, it's satisfying to understand and know how those things work.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'm making the best decision. I mean, I some drummers are just want to spend all the time creating and practicing their thing and doing their thing, and I think that's great because they kind of blaze a trail for the rest of us. And it's exciting when you see somebody who's got fresh ideas and that's just what they live. And I was never that as a drummer. I always wanted to be able to do things that other people did, but I didn't really have much of a desire to come up with my own style or sound or anything. It's just not how I function, I guess. So yeah, but yeah, I guess that means I don't really have a lot of hobbies, but I like doing escape rooms when we're not in a pandemic.
Oh,
I find that's fun.
yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. I've done a few of those. They're good. Have you got escape rooms in the US? Then is it a big thing?
Oh, there's loads. Yeah. And it was just, that was something that me and my now wife and our friends just did a couple of times for fun. And then there was one occasion where we went out one evening to do one, and then they said, you can have 20% discount if you do another of our rooms, you know, book another of our rooms now. And we decided to do it then. And then we said, should we do another one like somewhere else? So we should do 3 in a day, which is a bit silly, but it's fun. I like problem solving.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe I should have more hobbies.
There was a really, I don't know when you moved out to the US, but there was a really good one in London that I went to maybe 4 years ago. I can't remember where it was, but it was literally like going into like the Crystal Maze. It was so good that like, all the people were acting in there, and then it was like you went into this like time travel thing, and then it was incredible, and then it was like you went to the Aztec zone, and there's like sand on the floor, and there's plants, and there's a waterfall, and you're like, man, they've spent some money on this escape room. This is like some serious, proper Crystal Maze stuff.
It's fun. I like with that kind of thing, the same analogy to these other things that we're doing. One person couldn't do that stuff on their, even if you had a lot of money, you can't do that. You can't make those big projects on your own. You need a team of people. I mean, I've done some impressive ones that have been built by, you know, just 2 or 3 people, and they've really done it themselves on a smaller scale. But it's hard as an individual to do certain things just because of the number of man hours it takes, you know. And PolyNome is like that. Like, I don't know how it works anymore. I've done it all, but it's over the course of 10 years, a lot of hours in 10 years. And there's sections of it that I don't even remember exist. And then if I find a bug in something, I have to go and figure out how it works, because I kind of boxed that section up a long time ago. And I'm going off on tangents. I saw a video of a Genesis thing, Phil Collins in the 80s or something, with a behind the scenes thing, and he was saying, you know, you see us doing it and you think it's all women and rock and roll and sex and drugs, and but there's a lot that goes on, and there's 200 people that make these things possible, and they go and it takes them 2 days to build the stage and do all this stuff, and kind of astounds me, all of that kind of thing. But there's people who who are just the cogs in that stuff, and they're all doing their jobs and enjoying it, and they're part of this big thing. I'm not answering any questions here, or I know what I'm talking about.
We're nattering. It's fine. It's good. And actually, that can kind of bring me to my next question, which is probably the most important question of this entire interview. So obviously, you live in the US now, and the food over there is very different to over here. But I'm sure you're going to have a strong opinion on this. So, what's your favorite biscuit?
My favorite biscuit. Do you ask this to everybody?
Yeah.
I would go with a Fox's thick cookie with chocolate chips, and I don't know if it's got a name, but I'm always pleased when they turn up in a dressing room. They're like chunky, just a good solid. That's a good solid biscuit. Yeah.
See, every US drummer that I've spoken to, like that was
They don't know what a biscuit is, right?
born there, I have to say cookie, because they're like, what's a biscuit? And all of them is pretty much double chocolate chip cookie, and it makes me think, have they
That's
got
all they have.
that? All they've got? Like, what about like
Yeah.
tea? Do they
No,
like,
they don't have that. They biscuit over here is a thing that you have with gravy, and it's like a kind of muffiny. I don't even know what it is, but that's what they call a biscuit. And yeah, cookie is their term for what we call biscuits, but it is basically kind of a cookie. They don't have the rich tea, they don't have digestives, they don't have custard creams. Like, they're missing out on a whole bunch of stuff.
oh, no party rings?
No what?
No
No
party.
party rings. No. Yeah, it's funny that that's not really caught on over here for whatever reason.
Wow. And I don't think they're so much into their dunking either. I mean, quite a few. The answer has been Oreo. An Oreo.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Dunking that into milk, but dunking it into tea, or I mean, would you be
No, I don't know.
a dunker?
I don't drink hot drinks, so I think it would be weird. I mainly drink water, and I think it would be weird dunking a cookie into a glass of water. But I don't know. I've never tried
I think that might be a bit weird, but
it.
that's definitely one to try. It would depend on what the biscuit was, you know.
I guess, yeah. I
So
don't know. I don't know that any biscuit would taste better for being just wet.
no, but it might make the water taste better.
Yeah, that's possible.
If you dip a party ring into a glass of water, that's going to be a party in your mouth right there. That's a whole new level to that glass of water. Good. There we go. That's the biscuit question. So my last serious question now is, if you could give one bit of advice to up and coming drummers, or for you, I'm going to ask for someone that's got a project that they really want to get off the ground. So, obviously something like PolyNome. So someone that wants to do that, or a drummer that wants to get started, what advice would you give?
My advice would be to remember why you're doing it in the first place. Nobody starts the path to becoming a drummer to make a living. That you do it because it looks like fun, and that it is fun to do. And then at some point, if you do decide you want to make a living from it, it becomes a different thing. You have to do different things and play in different styles and do things that you might be, you didn't really picture in the first place, and it becomes a job. And so remember the fun elements of it, because the same thing with the software. I started the PolyNome thing because it was something that I wanted to own, and I didn't know that it would ever make any money. And I put so many hours into it that if I was billing for them, if I had to get somebody else to write the app, I wouldn't have been able to afford it, and it might never have made any kind of profit. But because it was done as a passion project, even when it started, when I was doing it with Lucas Ives, I said, if you can write, if I'll tell you how it should work, if you can make the app, I'll do the website, I'll do the promotion, and then we'll split any income that it might make. And he was happy with that because he also, saw the value in just making this thing. But all of the things, like everything on some level is harder than you might think it's going to be. And I think students, or a lot of people, will give up too soon because they think they're not making progress fast enough. And yet as a teacher, you might be well aware that, oh, they're actually picking that up really quickly, but they can get frustrated and think they're not any good. But if you can stick it out past that point, then you'll have some kind of improvement that will be exciting to you. And then you'll plateau for a while. And it's when you're on the plateaus and you're not seeming to get any better, it's remembering that it will come. So the idea of, if you want to get to the top of a mountain, there's no way you're going to be able to jump up there in one step, no matter how many times you try it. If that's what you're aiming for, it's not going to work. But if you just go one step at a time, eventually you'll get there without even realizing that, none of the steps are big. You never suddenly get really good at something. But there'll be small improvements along the way that you can enjoy. So as long as you can keep it fun, don't get put off. And when I'm working on things, any practice session or coding session or anything, I just look for the smallest thing that I could do today that would be an improvement. So if with software, it might be, I'm going to try and fix this one little bug, or I'm going to try and make this button be this color, or just the simplest thing. And with drumming, it might be, I'm just going to play just the right hand part of this pattern and watch what's going on and try and get that to feel a little bit more comfortable. It's not a big goal of I want to play, this at 100 BPM faster than I can now, because that's never going to happen in an instant. It's always going to be at the same speed that your hair grows.
Yeah.
You can't will yourself to just have longer hair. You just got to keep staying alive.
Tell me about it. I won't let my wife cut it, not at the moment. And actually, that rings true to something I'm telling students all the time, because I always sense this frustration. My doubles just aren't getting any faster. I just, and I'm just, all you can do at that stage, if they're doing everything right, all you can do as a teacher is just encourage them. Just keep practicing it, keep going. I think people don't realize how much practice and how much time it takes to get good at something. They just expect it to happen the next lesson. When it comes to double strokes and things like that, it's something that takes quite a long time.
Yeah. I mean, I still, if I work on stuff now, I still work on just simple hand technique stuff, really basic things. But there's a difference between being able to do something and being able to do it well and being able to do it efficiently. And even Peter Erskine, I met with him and I was, took a lesson with him once, and I asked him what he practiced, and he said he just practices time, but simple time and some simple reading things and simple hand technique, the same stuff that everybody does, because you can always be a bit better. And that leads to all of the other things. But finding enjoyment in those small improvements is what keeps me on the path, basically.
Yeah.
Because it would be easy to give up and go, oh, this is just going to take too long. Like, why am I doing it? And maybe you shouldn't be. Maybe, there's something else that you would find like a passion for. There's always a question like, why are you doing what you're doing if it's not fun? But I try and find ways to make the things fun that I want to do.
And someone said this recently in one of these interviews, don't think about the end goal all the time. Enjoy the journey to that end goal. Enjoy the learning up to that end goal.
Yeah, in large part because when you get to the end goal, it will be disappointing. You might have like a moment, like this is what goes back to what we were saying at the beginning, the things that I was really excited about, like touring the States, and now just things that I do and it's just part of my day job and I might rather be doing something else, which seems crazy, but you will acclimatized to whatever it is that you want, and the dream is always more exciting than the reality. And getting there is fun. I listened to an interview with Jim Jeffries recently, and he was sort of saying like it was really fun when he had no money and he was just doing stand up in small clubs and dreaming about the big thing. And then certain things came along where someone paid for a flight for him to go somewhere and paid for a hotel, and he's like, this is great. And the way up is fun, and then you get to a certain level, and then you sort of think, oh, I'm probably not going to get any higher than this, and then at some point it's just going to be, it's going to go the other way. So you got to be happy with where you are, because you'll always be where you are. You're never going to be anywhere else.
Yeah. So, Joe, thank you so much for spending your time with us here at DrumWise today. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
It's been a pleasure talking to you too. I hope you can manage to edit that down to something that won't bore the pants off everybody.
I moved a bit about the party rings and the water.
Yeah.